I don't know a ton about design. I'm not necessarily the most techie person, and my camera setup is just okay. But if there's one thing I know how to do better than anyone I know, is how to build a profitable sales funnel from start to finish. And that's exactly what we're going to cover in this full course. In the last several years, I've built many different high converting funnels across various niches, either coaching clients on it or actually doing it for myself. And the funnels I've built have directly attributed to thousands, if not millions of dollars in sales. And now I'm going to show you exactly how to do it, how to get started for free in this full course. I'm not holding anything back. But before we dive in, I have to be honest with you. This video is over an hour long. So if you're just looking for a quick tip or a funnel hack, this probably isn't for you. But if you're actually serious about learning how to build a working, proven funnel, and you're going to immediately implement, then keep watching. We'll talk about the best performing funnels I've created, why you actually need a funnel, the overarching sales funnel strategy you need in order to succeed, each component of a winning funnel, and then how to build the funnel step by step with all the details to consider, all the way through to the email strategy and the traffic strategies to generate leads. And finally, exactly what to optimize for and how to test your funnel so you can double, if not triple, your conversion rates over time. So that by the end of this course, you'll have everything you need to build a sales funnel that consistently prints money. Let's get into it. All right, so first let's talk about the best performing funnels I've personally made. Now, there's a lot of different ways for you to create funnels. There's so many different funnel structures and there's just a lot to consider. We are going to drill it down into the best one for you to get started with today, but I wanted to share with you 3 different ones that I've really found the most success with. The first one is what I call a roadmap funnel, but essentially in this space, people know it really as an evergreen webinar. Essentially, an evergreen webinar is a training that you do. Now, this can be a live training, so it doesn't necessarily have to be on evergreen, but what my clients really like doing and what I really like doing is having an evergreen webinar where people are signing up for free to attend a training, they're watching a training, and then they're buying your back-end offer, whether it's an online course or group program or something like that. So I've done this for many different types of offers, and my favorite one and what actually got me started really laser focusing on evergreen funnels and evergreen webinars, which is what I coach clients on now, is a course that I created. This is probably back in 2019 called Serve to Sell. So it was a course helping online coaches and online service providers to get started with their business, to book their first 10 clients without feeling awkward around selling. So it was really about being able to do it in a way that isn't sleazy. And we sold this course for between about $1,000 to $1,500 using an evergreen webinar. So here's some of the results around recurring revenue for that, because that's obviously the best thing that you can have. Obviously, we always want the income immediately. Obviously, that was exciting as well, but I wanted to highlight the recurring revenue specifically because that's something a lot of people struggle with, and it's the most important thing in any business, is knowing that every single month you're not starting at zero. So this evergreen webinar, I was able to generate pretty good recurring revenue. You can see there's 3 screenshots here because we have a lot of different products, a lot of different offers for the same thing. We've done a lot of different price increases and tests and stuff like that, which is why it's separate here. But that's been one of the easiest ones to create that actually sells a high converting backend offer without sales calls. The other one, and the one that I often talk about, are micro offers. So I call them micro offers, low ticket offer, essentially, where you're selling a very low cost product under $50 and you have different order bumps and different things. And that we'll talk about that today. But one of my most successful ones, and the one that I did run for quite a while, is my group program workbook. I sold that for $7. Of course, I also included a lot of different upsells. And you can see here, I had over 2,000 customers, which is very exciting, generated a little over $70,000 in revenue just from that product. So again, maybe if you're watching a lot of other people who are making millions of dollars, that might not sound like as exciting, but it's very, very exciting to me because it's a very low cost product. I created it once, I didn't have to deliver, and it was profitable with ads, which is obviously what we want as well. And the last one, I don't have examples for because I've done it in a lot of different ways, but it's essentially what I call like the free to paid upgrade funnel, but a lot of other people also call it a self-liquidating offer, where essentially you have some kind of a free offer on the front end. It could be an ebook, it could be a free guide, it could be a mini training, it could be a live masterclass. It doesn't have to be like an evergreen webinar where everything is over planned, over strategized. It's simply some kind of a free thing that people are signing up for, and then you sell them into a low cost thing immediately afterwards. When we think about funnels, that's the one that we typically hear about. That's typically the one we we think of. And it's what I would say most people get started with because it is the simplest thing that you can create. So for the purposes of what we're going to be doing today, I'm not going to be talking about evergreen webinars. There's a lot involved. I'm not going to talk about micro offer funnels. I've talked about that in other videos. I am, however, going to talk about the free to paid upgrade funnel because it is the easiest one to get started with. And you can literally get that set up today or tomorrow, like basically get it done this week. So that's what we're going to focus on during this course. But before we jump into everything, why should you even make a funnel? What is a funnel? How is it different? Why should you create one? And when are you ready? So there's a lot of considerations here. And a lot of times people seem to misunderstand what a sales funnel actually is. A lot of times people think that a part of your website is a funnel. A lot of times I'll see people as they attempt building a funnel, they will send people to like a page on their website, their services page or an about page, or there's a lot of things that I see on pages as people are creating funnels that are actually not effective. So what I need you to understand is there's a massive difference between the purpose of your website and the purpose of a landing page or a sales funnel. So your website, the purpose of your website is really for authority building and credibility. They're going there because they want to see, are you legit? Are you someone I can trust? What have people said about working with you? Can I believe what you're telling me? What is your approach? So it is kind of like a business card, but it's all in one place. So that's amazing and that's wonderful. However, the purpose of a website isn't necessarily to generate as many conversions as possible. In fact, a website isn't really usually conversion optimized, which means that you can have thousands and thousands of people landing on your website, and you're probably not going to have thousands of people buying your offer or booking a call or whatever that might be. It's going to be a very, 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 very small percent of people who are actually taking action. Now, there are different things that you can do to increase the conversion of your website. Using things like ConvertBox with little pop-up that can appear or little sliders that can appear on your website can definitely help. And they can actually be a part of your funnel. But a sales funnel, a funnel is actually kind of its own thing. Your sales funnel is comprised of several different pages that the only purpose of every single page, called a landing page, is to get the conversion. That means there's very minimal extra things on there. There's no social media icons. There's no navigation bar on the top. There's no like other parts of the website people can go to, an about page, a services page. It's just like, here's the focus, opt into this thing. And because of that, they also get to be a lot more simple to create. We'll talk about tools and how to create ones and what are the things that you need to consider a little bit later in this course. But why do you need a funnel? The main reason why is because it allows you to have more sustainability. It allows you to have more sanity. It allows you to have a customer journey. If you're anything like a lot of people out there, you're probably posting on social media. Maybe you're making YouTube videos. Maybe you have a podcast, whatever. And generating all of that visibility is great. But if you're not making money, then it's going to be a problem. And most people, the only thing they do is just, hey, book a discovery call with me. And that's fine. That's a good first step. But some people, it's like not enough for them. They want to kind of be seduced a little bit, essentially. So when you create all this content on all these different platforms, you want to eventually move them into your email list. So when are you ready to create one? Honestly, as soon as possible. People sometimes think that you need to have a really large audience before you're ready to create a funnel. People think that you need to be very techy or have a tech team or have all these different pieces in place. But the truth is you don't need to have any of those things. All you need to know is what exactly are you doing? What is your niche? What do you want to be known for, essentially? And that's pretty much it. From there, you can start by building out a pretty straightforward and simple funnel, which is what we're going to talk about today, so that you can start collecting people, getting people onto your email list, and consistently getting comfortable with selling to them. A lot of people struggle with sales. A lot of people feel uncomfortable with selling. And the most important thing you do as a business owner is to release that fear. And having funnels where they sell for you, you don't have to actively be the one pitching people. It is a massive game changer because you know that once you've set it up once, it's going and working around the clock for you. All right, number 3, let's talk about the funnel strategy. What actually do you need to consider as it relates to building out your funnel? So there's a few things you need to make sure you're clear on. The first thing being your ideal client. So this is pretty basic. If you've already have a business, you probably already know who your ideal client is, but we always start with there. So you want to identify who is that person, but more importantly, you don't necessarily have to dive into all the things about like, well, this person wakes up in the morning and has matcha tea and then she goes and takes her dog for a walk. Like, unless that's like relevant to what you're actually selling, you don't need to get into this whole super detailed customer avatar persona thing. You don't have to do that. However, you do need to be clear as to what are the problems that this person is dealing with. What are the problems? What are the pain points this person is dealing with? What are the challenges that this person has? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, every single offer, every single product, including freebies, they all solve a problem. They provide a solution to a specific problem. That's what makes this industry work. So you need to be clear on what kind of problem are you solving with the work that you're doing. Let's say that you're a life coach. That's awesome. You're helping people's life become better. But what is the actual pain? What is the actual problem that people are having that is causing people to pay you? Sometimes people might think, well, there's nothing really serious. It just is like life in general, but that's not actually true, because you might be working with people on a lot of different things when you're actually working with them one-on-one. But the thing that got them to sign up with you and actually give you money was because they wanted something they don't have. Whether it's they did want a specific problem, challenge, or issue solved, or they wanted to reach an outcome. They wanted to learn something, gain a skill. They wanted something that they don't yet have. So just a lot of times when I see creators and coaches saying that, you're going to be more confident, or you're going to be able to feel good in your body, like that's great, but it's very abstract. Like, what does that even mean? What does it mean that I feel good in my body? Like, I could feel good today, but not so good tomorrow. Maybe I'm bloated today. Maybe I'm not bloated tomorrow, right? So what exactly does that look like? How can you make it more specific? And that's really the name of the game here. When it comes to funnels, you actually want to think about, how specific can I get? Can I get more specific than that? We live in a world where everyone's online. Everyone's creating offers, everyone's creating funnels, everyone's creating stuff. And what used to work several years ago, which was kind of more broad, general ideas, doesn't really work anymore, because you're going to be competing with people who have millions of followers. If you don't have millions of followers, you can't be broad. You can't be generic around the things that you're creating. So you need to get very, very, very specific as to what are the unique, specific problems my ideal client is dealing with, and how can I provide solutions to those problems. Which brings me to the second point, the offer structure. This is the thing. Every single thing that you create in your business, and this is a big marketing thing in general, you want to reverse engineer what exactly are going to be the front-facing marketing pieces. Your content, your low-ticket offers, your freebies, all of that has to make sense in relation to what you're actually wanting to sell on the back end. So I'm going to go off of the fact that a lot of my clients sell coaching, a lot of my clients sell services. So I'm going to assume maybe that's the case for you as well. So if that's the case, you want to identify, okay, again, we already talked about this. What exactly am I selling on the back end? What is my ideal high ticket purchase, essentially? So that could be your high ticket coaching, or it could be anything. And it doesn't have to be a high ticket, but that's generally what a lot of people end up doing. So that's what we're going to go with here. So if you are, for example, a health coach, let's say, then what are the issues that people tend to come to you for? Now, of course, there might be a lot of different issues that people have, because obviously that's the value of working with somebody one-on-one. They get to solve a lot of different problems they didn't even know they had. And that's awesome. But what are the things that you typically see people are coming to you for? And that's what I like to do. I like to start kind of branching out, essentially. So I start with, what is my ultimate back-end offer? And let's say that's one-on-one health coaching. And from there, I ask myself, okay, if I was to separate this into a few categories, what are the common things that people come to me for? What are the common areas? And they don't have to be very narrow quite yet, but what are the typical things? So let's say in your example, people come to you because they want help with weight loss. Maybe they want help with fitness. Maybe they want help with cravings. Maybe they want help with just aesthetics. Maybe they want help with improving for medical reasons, medical outcomes, or whatever that might be, right? So there's a few different categories. Now, there's a cool thing that you could do. Once you've identified a few of those categories, you can drill deeper. So by the way, each of those categories could be its own like group program or a mastermind or an online course, although you probably want to drill it down a little bit more deep and specific from there. But that is an angle and an area that you could go into, because if you have a program that's targeting every single thing under the sun, it's going to be kind of hard. So the next step that you want to do is identify, okay, within each category, what are the other things that people ask for that make sense in this category? So if we're looking at weight loss, what are the things within weight loss that people actually ask me about, that people struggle with? So in this case, maybe it's nutrition, maybe it's macros, maybe it's like, what's the workout? Maybe it's breaking through a plateau. Maybe there's something else, right? So you can ask yourself, what are those specific things? Okay. Going into, if you're doing fitness, maybe it's specific kettlebell workouts. Maybe there's like cardio stuff. that you're doing. Maybe there's HIT, or maybe there's something else. When it comes to cravings, maybe there's sugar cravings, maybe there's salt cravings. Maybe people struggle with emotional eating. Maybe they struggle with binging, right? So there's a lot of like subcategories that you can look into. So that's something that you can do from there. Now, we're not done yet, because you can see these are still pretty broad. So you can continue doing this process until you find a pretty specific thing that you maybe haven't seen out there as much. And why do we do this? Why is it important that you drill deep? I know this is something that a lot of people rebel against, because you want to help people with all kinds of things, and there might be a little bit of FOMO that might come through. You might worry that if I laser focus on one thing, what about all these other issues that I can help people with? There's actually a lot that's involved in creating transformation. I agree with you. There is a lot involved in creating a transformation. But if you talk about just all the things, you're not going to stand out. So in order for you to stand out in a competitive industry that is online, you want to stop competing with people who are trying to go after the big piece of the market. Is it better that you get known for one thing and people actually recommend you to others? People share your stuff, share your content out there. People opt in and sign up if you're going to run ads at a lower cost. Is that more important? Or is it more important that you talk about all the things you want to, but struggle, right? Obviously, I think you probably want to make sales and want to grow an audience and make it easier on yourself. So I know you might have heard from a lot of people on YouTube that you don't have to niche down, but when it comes to this, I highly, highly recommend that you do niche down. So once you've identified what that might be, what is that specific thing, you're going to want to create some kind of a freebie, essentially. So there's 3 pieces to this process, and we're going to talk about the funnel components in just a bit, but there's a few offers that you want to consider here. So we talked about your backend offer. You're probably going to be selling that backend offer with sales calls for the sake of simplicity here. Obviously, there's many different ways of selling any kind of high ticket offer. Most people are familiar with sales calls, so that's what I'm going to talk about here. So that's great. You're going to optimize for sales calls in your email list. That's wonderful. But how are you getting people onto your email list, and how are you qualifying them? So there's 2 other offers that you want to create. You want to create your freebie offer. So that's your freebie that people are actually going to be moving into. And you can also create essentially what we call a tripwire, but this is essentially a low ticket offer that shows you, hey, which of these people that are joining my email list are actually committed enough that they're willing to pay for the solution. So how do you differentiate between a freebie and a tripwire? The freebie can be a little bit slightly more broad, but the tripwire is where you dive deeper. Like you go into a specific topic with more depth, you provide resources, you provide templates, things like that. So as an example of this weight loss, a tripwire could be, well, there's a lot of things that a tripwire could be. Ideally, your tripwire would be under $50. That's my recommendation for pretty much all of you guys. We're not going to get super complicated with this funnel. This is just like a beginning type of funnel that you can create that's pretty straightforward. And you can do additional things as a part of that too. But there's a lot of different things that you can sell. So you can create a behind the scenes course. You can create a workshop that people will get access to this workshop recording. That's one of my favorite things actually to do is I either do live workshops and I sell recordings. I can do a series of workshops. So you can do essentially a workshop where you're diving deeper into a specific topic. You can do resources. So like templates, spreadsheets, trackers, especially in the weight loss niche. I mean, people love using trackers. People love having like diet plans, fitness plans, people love having things like that. And that can all fit under the $50 price point. There's no access to support. There's no implementation support. They're just simply download a thing that they want. So once you've identified what makes the most sense for you, and by the way, you can test all of these. This is really funnels and testing go hand in hand. You're going to want to test a lot of different things as you're going through. So there's really no need to be a perfectionist here. You just want to pick one, go with it, and then you can always add it, swap it in for something else later. Now, the freebie is how you're actually going to be generating people and moving them onto your email list. So a freebie is typically it'd be something like an ebook, a guide, a checklist. It could be a mini video, a mini training, things like that, but it's meant to be really digestible. It's meant to be something that people can consume very quickly. We've also seen people do quizzes. We're not going to talk about quizzes today because it's more of a complex strategy, but there's a lot of different things. Essentially, people are going to opt in to get something. So if your program is, let's say that you're going to be helping people with overcoming sugar cravings and not, from women in menopause, let's say, then your freebie can literally be, here's my guide, or here's a checklist for overcoming sugar cravings as a woman in menopause. Like that's basically like, it's like an overview. That's the best way for me to explain it, because what people used to sell, or what people used to give away for free, was just like not very good. It was like a checklist that was, I mean, I could have gone on ChatGPT and gotten that for myself, right? So what you want to ask yourself is, what is your unique way of looking at it? So you know what people's problems are, you know what solution you can provide for them. So how can you ask yourself, what is my unique way of looking at it? And how can I just share that with people? Because people are going to hire you because they want your support. So in order for them to feel like you are the person for them, they need to know, what do you believe? What are your approaches? What are your philosophies? What have you done for other people before? What are the results you've gotten? These are all the things that you can do in the freebie. From there, you're going to present them with a tripwire, a low ticket offer that simply goes deeper or actually gives them something. So the question might be, okay, so what platforms am I using? There's a lot of platforms out there. I always recommend that you start with the simplest things that you can use. So what you're going to need is a way to process payments, get payments on board, a way to deliver the things that you're selling to people or giving them for free, and a way to host pages, essentially. And there's many different tools. The one that I typically recommend for my clients to start with is Thrivecart. And the reason why is because it is a one-time payment, which obviously is great. You're in business for any length of time. You're going to be saving a lot by not having that recurring payment. And it allows you to have funnels. Like, it actually is funnel oriented. So you can have this thing where people are opting in to get access to something. You can present an offer on the back end, and you can do a lot of other great things. But you might need additional platforms to like build out a nicer landing page and stuff like that, which Thrivecart can't really do. At which point, there's a lot of landing page building options out there. You can use something like ConvertTree. If you have a website, you can have a convert box, which a little pop-up that appears. There's a lot of different options that you can look at, but we'll talk about that in a bit more depth as soon as we move into the next section, which is coming up in just a few seconds. Now, the last thing I want you to understand is what actually makes a funnel work is not the tech. So yes, the tech is important. You want to make sure all the pieces make sense together. They all work together. That is essential. But people get hung up on the tech. People think that the tech, you need the most complicated tools, you need the most complex and most expensive things. You don't. The only thing that actually matters and what makes the funnel work is the psychology, is the thing that you're selling, is the, like, how are you showing up? Are you saying something that's actually different from what they haven't heard before? And that's the process that takes the most time. It's just thinking about, well, how am I going to show up? What am I going to say? What is going to be my way of looking at things? How can I be more specific? How can I speak to a more tailored type of person so that I'm not blending in with everyone else? That actually is what makes a funnel work. And then from there, we can work on increasing conversions on each specific funnel component. Which brings me to the next section. Let's talk about the funnel components. So this is going to be the best way to really understand how all of these pieces work together, because, you know, we've kind of talked about it in a theoretical sense, but I want to show you how to actually like map it out. Like, how does it actually work, essentially? Okay, so let's talk about the funnel components. What exactly are the pieces, the sections of a working funnel? So we have a few things. We first of all have your opt-in page, which is what the opt-in page is, to generate opt-ins, as in leads, essentially. So people are going to go to a page, enter their information, their name and email, in order to sign up and receive free access to that freebie that we discussed. From there, we have a sales page. So this is where that tripwire idea comes in. So instead of just sending them to a page where you're like, thanks so much, bye, you're going to actually send them to a page that says, hey, thanks so much, and would you like this other thing that I have that can make your experience better? It's essentially a hybrid sales page that's selling your offer. From there, people get to purchase. So there's something that we want to have, and this would happen on the same page, but you can have what we call an order bump. An order bump is essentially a tiny little extra thing that you can sell to them to increase your average order value. The order bump is meant to be an impulse buy, just like the sales page. It's meant to make that low ticket offer, that tripwire offer, sound really irresistible and sound like an easy next step. The price needs to seem like an easy yes. It's meant to be like, if you're going through at the checkout line in the grocery store and you see a pack of gum, you can just grab that pack of gum. It's a small purchase. It's just an easy thing. It's like nothing. And the order bump is another thing. So if I'm seeing a pack of gum, I also see Reese's, and maybe I'm like, okay, maybe I want the Reese's too. So it's just another like, hey, would you like this too? Then Next, we have an upsell. So this is an optional thing. If you're building out your initial stage funnel, you don't necessarily have to have an upsell, but we can have an upsell in this case. And this is essentially where you can sell a session with you can sell a course that you have. And then lastly, we have the thank you page. The thank you page is where you tell them, hey, the order is complete. Here's the next step. Here's where to get access to it, and going from there. So I want to show you examples of what this would look like. And I'm just going to be using template examples because ultimately each page is going to look very different depending on what you're creating and stuff like that. But there's a few specific components I want to call out as I'm showing you these examples. So first, let's start with the opt-in page. So this is a template. So you can literally go into Convertri right now and grab this template and just customize it with your information. I didn't customize it because I just wanted to show you a few visual things for you to pay attention to. So the first thing is you can have a company logo here. It's not required. If you're new in business and you don't have a logo, skip it. This is the most important thing. This is where you want to speak to what is the outcome, what is the problem, and who is it for. So, if it's a free guide that you're giving away, I added a little picture here of a guide that I have created before. That's actually a paid offer, but I wanted to show you kind of an illustration here. But you want to say, download the free guide to help you beat cravings for good as a woman in menopause and, release the bloat or whatever that may be. And then you can add something else. This is a little extra thing like limited time. If you are ready to blah, 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 or maybe you can use something like testimonials, right? So Sarah used this exact process to drop 15 pounds in just 30 days. Oh, that seems like a lot. I don't know. I'm not a weight loss coach, but you basically can incorporate something that would make this offer even more interesting. You don't want to add any unnecessary things in here, but social proof, as in other people are using this, is valuable. Testimonials are valuable. Speaking to outcomes, speaking to solutions, speaking to what can I actually get as a result of downloading this is all going to be valuable. So you notice here, I added a picture. This is like a mock-up, what we call, of the product that I've created. Obviously, you're going to want to go and create the product. So if it's an ebook, you're going to want to create something like this. If you are doing a video that people get access to, you can put the screenshot of the video. So as you recorded your video, you can take a little screenshot, put a little play button on there. So it looks like if they click on it, the video will play, but it doesn't actually play. They have to opt in. They have to give you their email address in order to play the video. But you want to show the visual representation of what the thing is that they're actually signing up to receive. Next, you remind them of the benefits. So we have a few things in here. So this is just, additional reasons for why to opt in. These are essentially like tiny little bullet points. And then we're asking them for their email address. This is important. Now, a lot of times I see people making this mistake where they ask for too much information. They ask for the first name, they ask for the last name, they ask for the email, they ask for the phone number. Truth is that the more things you ask for, the lower your conversion is going to be. So my recommendation to make your life as easy as possible and generate as many leads as possible, don't ask for anything except your email address. That's it. So you can see that in this example, all we're asking for is their email address. They enter this in and they can click download and sign up. That's an example of what you can have your opt-in page look like. The next step is the sales page. So this is where you can continue using Convertri if you want to, but you can also just go ahead and move into Thrivecart, which is what I would do. And that's where you can start talking about the low ticket offer that you're going to want to sell. So inside of Thrivecart, you can go in and create the product, make sure it's set to live. You set the price point. Again, I recommend under $50. The lower the better, honestly. If you're not very experienced with this, make it super easy. You can even go as little as $7, $9, $11. I'm going to go with 17. This is where we choose the order bump. So I'm going to create an order bump that simply makes this process better. So I'm going to go ahead and add a tracker and I'm going to charge $27 for it. You're going to put your email address, display their total invoice. That's fine. And this is where you get to create that page. So let's take a look here. All right, so I chose a template that looks pretty good. And again, I'm not going to build this out because it's going to take way too long, but you can go ahead and build this out yourself. It's really quite intuitive with how you do everything. But again, I want to call out a few things so that you actually get this done correctly and you are aware of the most important parts of what makes this page work. So people are going to see this page immediately after opting in and signing up to get your freebie. So we want to acknowledge that. We don't want to just send them immediately to a sales page because they'll be confused. They'll be like, what just happened? Why am I now seeing an offer for a product? So something else that I want to add here is I want to customize customize and add a section that's going to reassure them. All right, I'm going to go with this little section here, and you can go with anything, but this is ultimately what you want to see happen at the very top. We're going to want to reassure them in the very beginning. So we'll say something like, thank you so much for opting in. The download is on its way to your inbox right now, and it will arrive in the next 15 minutes. In the meantime, here's how to improve your results even faster. Okay, so we just say, thank you for opting in. Great, we have that. And this is where we basically do a pivot. So we transition from you just opted in for this free thing, it's going to be great, to let me tell you a little bit about something else I have available for you. Now, if you're going to be presenting a video, you can actually use this section, for example, and drop in a video and stuff like that. So this actually can be a much simpler page. So that's actually what I'll do here. I'm actually going to remove this part. I'm going to remove this part. I'm going to remove this little block here, and I'm just going to keep this. So thank you so much for opting in. Wonderful. You can change out your logo, and you can say, here, we're going to say something that why should you take advantage of this now? So let's make it a limited time offer. Get 50% off on this page only. So this is where you put a headline. What exactly is the next step? So if they just opted in for a overview guide on how to curb their cravings, then maybe this is a 90-day fitness plan. So we say, what if I told you exactly what to eat and what workouts to do in order to lose 30 pounds in 90 days during menopause? I mean, I'm only 35, but a lot of my clients lately have a bit in the menopause niche, so that's what came to mind here. So this is a headline that's building up on what they already opted in for. So here I would say, watch the video below to learn more. This is where you can put in a video. Video is totally optional, by the way. So you don't have to have a video. You can just go right into selling the thing that you want to sell, and that's totally okay too. I do find that a lot of times nowadays people want to see you, they want to see your face, they want to, or hear your voice at least. If you're not willing to get on camera and show up with your face, that's fine. At least they want to hear your voice. So you can have slides, you can have whatever, and you simply want to talk about hey, you just signed up for this thing. What if you could get this result even faster? This is basically what we call a VSL, a video sales letter, which we're not going to have time to dig into. And there's so many different ways of doing it. I actually don't use VSLs very often in my business. I usually just literally will show up on camera. It's really not a super complex thing. You're just talking about this offer. You're telling somebody about it as if you're talking to a friend. We can remove this unless you have great testimonials. If you have great testimonials, you can drop them in here. So now you talk about it. So whatever you talked about in the video, you essentially do a walkthrough of that on this page. And this is a really great structure. So you can literally, you can also use ChatGPT to help you with creating a sales page. ChatGPT is really good with that. Claude is really good with that. There's a lot of AI tools that are really great with getting your initial sales copy done. So that's something for you to definitely play around with. But this is a pretty good structure as to what exactly is going to be included. The most important thing I want to mention here. So you can see there's a few bonuses here. You don't necessarily have to have bonuses for a low ticket offer. I think it is helpful to have bonuses, but it isn't a requirement to have bonuses. If you were to have bonuses, you want to think about what are the things that I can incorporate in this offer to make it an even more no-brainer purchase. So if I'm selling a fitness plan for 90 days, then maybe a bonus is audio recordings from my client sessions to help them lose weight even faster. Maybe it's a supplement plan. Maybe it's video tutorials of how to actually do every single move. So they're creating a nice little bundle package to make it more just kind of feel wow, everything is really covered. It seems like a steal. That's what you want it to feel like. You want it to feel like the price is just incredible for what they're getting. Moving further on this page, if you're selling a lower priced offer, and if you don't have any bonuses, you don't need to do what we call a value stack. But if you are incorporating any bonuses, it is a good idea to showcase the value of each individual bonus and what it stacks up to be, what the total value is. So then when you present your price point, which ideally would be quite a bit lower than the total value, it again feels like, oh my gosh, this is really amazing. Then on the very bottom, again, this is where you actually get them to give you money essentially. So you can ask for some basic information. Definitely make sure that you ask them for their email. I also recommend that you have them actually confirm their email address. One of the biggest things that prevents people sometimes type in the wrong email address by accident. They do typos and then they get upset and they think that something happened. So I think it's just always better to have them verify their email address to make sure that they're not doing a typo. So that's one thing I would add. At this point, I do like asking for a name. You could ask for just the first name. That's totally fine. And then of course, drop in any terms and conditions. So whatever you have on your website, or you can just type it in here. Are there refunds? Are there not refunds? Anything else? And again, you can go into ChatGPT and ask to create like a terms and conditions for the door product. You can describe what it is. This is not legal advice, just FYI, I'm not a lawyer, so don't necessarily say that, you doing ChatGPT for your terms and conditions is enough. Always work with a lawyer, but that is a way for you to get around that. This little section here is the order bump. So this is where you can describe what is that one extra thing that you can ask them for. I like having an image, so you can use any kind of image that would be a good description of what it is that they're getting. I like to use that mock-up idea. So here's an example of a mock-up that I created, but you don't have to use an image. We have a lot of people that never use images. You can very easily turn that off. And the way I like to structure that is I say wants to X, Y, and Z, and you can share a little bit of information about that. And then this is what you're seeing here. This is a two-step checkout. So they're going to enter their information. When they click on continue, it will actually take them to the second part of the page where they will be able to enter their card information, and then they click complete order. So you can customize all the colors, make it branded to you. Ultimately, the branding doesn't matter that much. I know people typically say that it does, but it doesn't. It does matter in terms of branding and consistency. Like I do think it's important to have consistent branding, but in terms of conversion, it doesn't matter that much. There's very, very small adjustments that you can make to potentially increase conversion, but it's not going to be gigantic. You're probably not going to notice it. Like changing a color button from, this purple to orange. Is it going to be doubled conversion? Probably not, but you never know unless you test, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So once you've created this page, you would go to next, and you can identify and say, what is the success page? So you can tell them, thanks for your order. Here's how to get access to it. You can kind of share a little bit more. If you have a video, I do like incorporating a video on the thank you page as well. This can be just a very simple video like, hey, thank you so much for your purchase. Here's what's happening next. You're going to get an email, or you can scroll down and get access, what have you, whatever, right? So you can kind of say all of the things. And again, you're creating that connection, because especially if you're going to want to sell a one-on-one offer, you want to build as much connection with people as possible. You want them to feel like they resonate with you, they like your vibe, they like how you show up. That's important. So if you're selling anything that's one-on-one, show off, like show them. One other thing I want to mention, however, is we didn't talk about the upsell in here. So the upsell is something that you can add. So when I'm over here in Thrivecart, you can actually add a funnel item, and that would be an upsell. So I'm going to go ahead and create an upsell. And let's say that this is going to be a strategy session. You typically would call it something more interesting than a strategy session, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to do that. So it's going to be $97. Amazing. I'm just going to save the upsell, and then I can add it in here. So now I can design the page for the upsell. So again, what's really cool about using Thrivecart is that the theme is consistent. So you can see, if you recall what the sales page looks like, the cart page, it had very specific visual aesthetic, and the upsell page has the same visual aesthetic. So there's that consistency, which is really important for making sure people don't get confused and stuff like that. So all you're doing here, you notice that there's a little section on top that says select product, customize product, complete order. That simply says that there's one extra step that they can do to customize their order. That's what we're doing. So in this example, if you're selling a strategy session, you don't want to just say, hey, want time with me, book a strategy session, because a lot of people can book discovery calls for free. So we want to make sure, if you're going to sell a session, like you want to make sure it looks different than just doing a sales call or just doing a discovery call. So ask yourself, what is something that I can actually do with this person during that conversation? Typically, we want to sell customization. So that's what people are going to want most of the time. They purchase a thing that's going to get them an outcome as long as they do it. They purchase hopefully an order bump to help them get that outcome even faster. Now they're thinking, okay, how do I actually for sure get it done even faster? You're selling speed, you're selling customization, you're selling implementation. This is why one-on-one or done for you works so well as upsells. So I would say something like, wait, want me to customize the whole process to you 100% so you can hit your goals in half the time? Watch this. And again, I would do a little video where you simply talk about what's the value of talking to me and what are we going to do in a session. This is not a sales call. You can talk about your offer during this call, but really that's not the focus. They are paying you for this offer. So that's really all. You can see that there's a lot of pieces on, like there's little sections, there's images. You actually don't need that much information on this upsell page because you just want people to watch this quick video. And that's going to be the easiest way for you to generate the sale. You can, of course, have a little summary and stuff like that as to what exactly are you going to be doing together? What are the possibilities? What are the outcomes? Maybe you can add some testimonials. That's always a great idea. So if you can add testimonials, especially from people who've done this session with you before, amazing. You can always add that in very easily. So if I was to, maybe we can just replace this, add a testimonial, and then summarize the testimonial, what this person was able to get out of doing that session with you. And of course, on the bottom, make sure that you adjust the pricing that's listed here. And when people click add to order, this is the thing that makes an upsell or a one-time offer. The thing that makes it such is that when they click, it automatically gets added to their order. They don't have to enter their information again, their card information, and it's an easy conversion. That's what we want. This is why it's so important that you use platforms and tools that make this possible. Because if people have to enter their credit card information once again, your conversion is automatically going to be significantly lower, if not even half or less. So that's what we want to do. The good thing is that Thrivecart does allow you to do that. So it really feels like a very seamless conversion mechanism, essentially. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is email integration. So when somebody purchases your product or when somebody just opts in and does not purchase your product, there's a few things that you want to do. I talked about why it's so important that you move people into your email list. Ultimately, email is the only thing you can control. Social media could go away tomorrow. Instagram could fall apart. TikTok could get banned in the US. And the only thing you still have access to is your email list. So this is why it's so important that you grow it. So there's a few things you need to understand when it comes to email and how we're going to be navigating email as it relates to your sales funnel. So there's two main email sequences you want to create for your funnel to make sense. So the first thing is you want to have a welcome email sequence plus a upsell sequence. So essentially for people who are opting in to get your freebie and they did not purchase your upsell, like that initial Tripwire offer, right? That $17 thing. You want to have a series of emails where you're introducing yourself. You're like, this is get access here. Here you go. Here's the thing you signed up for. And here's what else we have. So I'm going to give you a general structure for what you can do to follow in order to make this work. So and again, this only really works for low priced offers. So the first email is going to be welcome and download the freebie. That's going to be the first email. You need to make sure this email is being sent to people immediately. As soon as they opted in, they get access to this freebie instantaneously. Then you can wait a few hours. I like to wait about 6 hours or so, and you send another email and you're like, did you get it? I love to do this, and I always ask them to reply to my email. We want people replying to your emails as much as possible because it's going to show to Gmail and Yahoo and all these different inbox platforms that you're a real person. And because real people reply to real people, they don't reply to companies necessarily. So the more you can get people responding to your emails, replying to your emails, the higher likelihood of your emails to actually land in the primary inbox, or at the very least, not in spam. So you want to incorporate that as much as possible. So this next email, 6 hours later or 4 hours later, something in that nature, I'd simply say, hey, just wanted to make sure you got access to the download. Let me know how it is. If you haven't, here's the link again. I look forward to hearing how it goes. That's it. Like very, very simple. You're not pitching anything quite yet. Next email I like to do, which is the next day. So next day, I send an email that basically talks about your approach, your philosophy as it relates to the thing that they downloaded. You don't want to go right into pitching because you already pitched your offer. You already gave them the opportunity to purchase your offer and they decided not to do it. So what you want to do at this point is you want to build the trust back up. You want to make them care. So you want to ask yourself, what are the things that I want people to know in order for them to feel intrigued enough to want to purchase this offer again or purchase this offer, period. So I like to do a trust building email, and this is a great opportunity for you to share your story. So maybe talk about why did I create this? Why is this important? What are the possibilities that could happen when you implement this? If you have any questions, let me know. That's all we're doing at this point. The email after that, which happens again the next day, is it could be a client story, but make sure that it's an actually valuable story. Don't just talk about it from a perspective of, here's how great I am. Look at this client. Look at this testimonial. Here's how great I am. That's not what you want to do. You actually want to provide some value, right? Provide an insight, a mindset shift, a new way of looking at it. So when they're reading this email, they're like, wow, this is actually making me curious. What else does this person have to say? At this point, you can bring back the product. So next day again, I say, let's talk about your philosophy and pivot into talking about your offer. And you can move them back into that one-time offer page, the thank you page, sales page hybrid that you've already developed. So talk about your philosophy. When I say philosophy, I mean, what's your viewpoint? What's your POV on this niche? Talk about that and then make sure that there's a pivot, there's a transition to talking about your offer again. And you talk about your offer and say, hey, if you missed the discount, one last chance to grab it. So you can tell them, hey, if you missed it, here it is. I would love for you to take a look and take a look if you're interested. Next day, I talk about the offer. What are the features? Why is it great? The following day, you want to do an FAQ, and a few hours later, last chance email. Okay. So that's a really simple email structure that you can do to encourage people to still take action on their purchase. Now, that's not the only email sequence you want to have. The second email sequence you want to have is the delivery email sequence. So they purchased your offer. Amazing. So delivery sequence. At this point, you want to make sure that they received access to the thing that they were promised, right? Here's how to get access to your purchase. And you'll notice that I do a very similar flow. Here's how to get access to your purchase. The second email I send, maybe 4 to 6 hours later, did you get it? I do the same thing every single time. I want people to respond to me. Now, what do we want people to do at this point? Well, the next step that we want people to take is we probably want them to A, either purchase that $97 strategy session, or B, to book a free discovery call. As long as you made a very clear distinction between the two, you can choose what makes the most sense for you. So I would personally recommend that you focus on moving them into that $97 strategy session, but ultimately it is totally up to you. And this is something that you're going to have to experiment with and see what actually is going to make sense for you, your audience. And this is one of those things that you'll have to test, which we will talk about a little bit later in this course as well. But I like to have an email that provides value. So I try not to go into pitching the next thing too quickly. So I might talk about, my favorite thing about the product you bought, and you kind of remind them to consume. So next day, the goal for these next few emails is consumption. You want them to consume the content. You want them to open it up. You want them to start using it, because if they're not using it, they're not going to see the value in wanting to buy more from you. The same thing next day after that. Another favorite thing about it, or maybe it can be a result, right? So all you're doing, your goal is simply consumption of product. That's all you want. That's the goal. That's the only goal you care about at this point. You can do one other email. I would send that 2 days later, and I would maybe say another favorite thing or a result. Again, same goal, consumption of product. Then you can wait 2 days later and say, I want to customize this for you. And you're kind of following the same structure as we talked about here. I want to customize this for you. Buy $97 session. 1 day later, here's how Sarah used her session and the results before and after. And you're pitching your 97 session again. And you can honestly continue doing that for a little while. Now, if you feel weird about offering it for $97, if you use the language that on the upsell, that is the only time to use it, to purchase it, which you don't have to use that language on the upsell page. But if you're like, okay, I told them that they can only buy it here for $97, I feel weird now selling it again for $97, then don't do that, obviously. You can sell it for a little bit more. But if you don't use that language on that upsell page, then there's no need to feel weird about it, right? So you can have a variety of other emails. I would say add another maybe 3 to 4 emails and add in some urgency. Talk about why it's valuable. Talk about like what they're missing out on if they don't do this, how much faster they're going to get to their outcome, what are potential mistakes they might get into or questions they might have, and the fact that they can actually use this time to talk to you and remind them that it is not a sales call. That's going to be the biggest thing that you need to incorporate in here. One last thing I want to say is as soon as somebody in the welcome sequence, as soon as somebody purchases, when someone buys, take them out of this sequence, okay? That's going to be important. Okay. So that's the like basic, simple thing for you to incorporate within the email integration. Where do you do this is going to be totally up to you because there's so many different email platforms, but pretty much every email platform, CRM, will be able to do this as long as it has automation. Automation is the most important thing. I use ActiveCampaign. You can use ConvertKit. You can use any email marketing platform to get this set up pretty easily. And within Thrivecart, you can actually have it set up where when you've created your pages, you can create automations. So once product has been purchased, I don't have any integration set up on this account, but you can actually have it set up where as soon as somebody purchases a product, they get, for example, added to an email list or they get tagged. So you can go through, there's a lot of tutorials Thrivecart has on how to set the details up in response to the specific platforms that you're using. All right, next, let's talk about how to actually generate traffic for this funnel and every other funnel that you're going to build in the future of your business. So there's 3 different types of traffic sources that you can typically generate. We have organic, which is typically posting in social media. I would say that's the most common way of generating organic traffic. You can also be on YouTube like we are here. But pretty much anywhere that's a place where people can kind of stumble upon your content in whatever way that looks like, that's going to be organic. Next, we have paid traffic. So paid traffic is running paid advertising. My favorite places to run paid advertising is on Meta, Instagram, and Facebook are my favorite platforms, but many people have had a lot of success running ads on TikTok. I know some people have used other platforms, but they are not quite as easy, I would say. So I definitely see people running ads on YouTube and LinkedIn and X, whatever else is out there, but I personally haven't done that very much. And to me, Meta and potentially TikTok have been the most effective ones. There are some considerations here. So Meta is the most widely used because it does incorporate Instagram. So even if your audience isn't necessarily on Facebook, because maybe you have a younger demographic, they're probably still hanging out on Instagram. TikTok skews even younger, so it could be a great platform for you to play around with. And both of those platforms and the dashboards for the ad manager tend to be actually quite similar. So if you know one, you're going to be able to manage with the other. And lastly, we have referral. So referral is essentially where you borrow other people's audiences or you have other people just sending traffic your way. So this is if you're ever going to have affiliates, joint venture partners, if you have somebody posting about you on Instagram and they're linking you, that's considered referral traffic as well. Now, one other thing I didn't mention is blogging and SEO. So if you have a website, then you're going to generate traffic from there. That's considered search traffic. And I would kind of consider that to be a part of organic traffic. The one that I think every single one of you guys is going to be using is likely going to be social media. So you want to choose one main social media platform that you want to double down on and go all in on. You can be successful with every single platform organically because all it comes down to is just content. You want to show up and post content, but not every single piece of content is going to actually get seen. You want to make sure that you're creating the type of content that is building interest and desire for your freebie. But I want to show you one structure that I like to use for generating leads for my freebies and for my low ticket offers and for whatever it is that I'm using. And what I basically do is I make a piece of content. I ask people to comment a keyword in the comments. And then I have an automation, a DM automation that is sent to those people who've commented on that word. And in the DMs, I then send them a link to the next step, whether it's to sign up for the freebie, for sign up for the free training, or purchase my low ticket offer. That is a structure that I use all the time, especially on Instagram, because it works really well. There's a platform you can use called ManyChat that allows you to set this up. We're not going to dive into the details of that, but there's a lot of tutorials I'm sure you can look up around DM automation. But I want to show you an example. So this is a carousel post. So you can scroll through and see there's text. I made this really easily. I don't even have a photo of me. It's just you can make a graphic like this and Piktochart if you wanted. And at the very end, I asked them to comment a word. So comment summer below and I'll send you a link to join. I was sending people to a training. So it's considered, it's a freebie. So you could do the same thing with a freebie. So I just want to go over what I said here. So summer slowdown is a lie. That's the hook, the thing that was bringing people in to watch and to scroll through. One other thing to be aware of is when you are posting a carousel, sometimes that carousel is going to show up in people's feeds if they're following you with this first slide, and sometimes it's going to show up with the second slide as well. So I like to make sure that second slide still has good amount of context involved. So I said, people love to say no one's buying right now when summer comes around, but they usually say it because they want to unplug, which is totally valid. If you want to rest, do it. But don't use people aren't buying as your excuse. Own your decision to rest and plan around it like a CEO. But if you do want to make sales, here's what to know. Yes, people can be more distracted in the summer, but that doesn't mean they're stop buying. It just means you need to approach it differently. This season is your chance to sell in a smarter way using buyer psychology and set up systems so you can keep selling even when you're offline. If you want to make your summer your more strategic season yet and set yourself up for the most profitable next few months, I'm doing a masterclass where I share how to navigate it. It's called the Strategic Summer Plan and it's fire. Comment summer below and I'll send you the link to join. Then you can see what I did in the caption. And as I said, comment summer to join my Strategic Summer Plan Masterclass and get set up for the most profitable next few months with your program, even if you haven't built it yet. So then we see people are commenting summer in the comments. So what happens when somebody comments summer? I have that automation that's kicked off using ManyChat. Here's what it looks. There's a little message that comes through. I said, thanks so much. So glad you're here. Thanks for your interest in the masterclass. Confirm by clicking this button. And I don't have to do that. I just like to confirm. People say, send me the link. And then I send them the link to my landing page to opt in. And that's it. That's the automation. And that works incredibly well on Instagram. You can do the same thing with Instagram Reels, single posts, but that's pretty much, I include some variation of that in like 80% of all the content I post on Instagram. And I recommend that you do too. And that way, the more you're going to have people seeing it, the more successful you're going to be. Now, I also want to mention paid. I already talked about paid advertising. This is something that I highly recommend most people to go into. I leverage paid advertising a lot. I spend a good amount of money on paid advertising every single month, but there's obviously a lot of things to consider when it comes to paid advertising. If you're not very techie, I do recommend that you focus on just posting as much as possible, getting your offer in front of your existing audience because your existing audience is going to be more receptive to it. Now, if you do have a budget and you're very experienced in business, there's no reason for you to wait to go into paid advertising because you'll get more data a lot more quickly, so you'll know what to change and tweak. This brings me to the last section, which is funnel optimization. So let's talk about analytics. How do you know if your funnel is working and what do you test first? So the thing with funnels is you want to be tracking every single part of your funnel. You want to bring it down and ideally you would create some kind of a spreadsheet or like make a list, and every single week or however often you want to do it, you want to start by writing down the metrics from the previous week. So here are the things I would track if I were you building out this funnel. So the first thing you want to track is your page views. So how many people have landed on your landing page, actually saw your landing page. The second thing you want to track is leads. How many people actually opted in? This brings you to a conversion rate. So how many people who saw your page actually turned into leads? So you want to take the amount of leads divided by the number of page views, and that's going to get you the conversion rate. Next, it's going to be dependent on what happens next essentially, but another thing that you can track is how many people actually purchased your tripwire. So we have a tripwire, we're inviting people to purchase. So you want to see how many of those people purchased. So buyers of tripwire. From there, you can calculate the conversion rate of how many people who saw that page, how many of those leads ended up becoming buyers. That's what we want to look at. Next, from those buyers, those initial buyers of the low ticket offer, how many of them took you up on the order bump or the upsell? So buyers of order bump, buyers upsell, and conversion rates for those. So there's a lot that you're tracking. You are going to have to get comfortable with math. So that's fine. How many people are actually booking calls with you? The free calls, for example, right? That could be the paid calls, it could be the free calls. It really depends on the details of what actually you're selling as a part of your funnel. But you want to see how many people are booking the calls. And then what is the conversion from leads to booked calls? And of course, lastly, this is a sales thing, but how many bought your backend program? And this will create the conversion from booked calls to sales. You can also track book calls to show ups, and you can get really granular with this. But essentially, I mean, again, the actual metrics are going to depend on what your funnel actually looks like. If you have multiple upsells, you're going to have multiple upsells in here. And this is essentially what you're doing. These are the minimum metrics you want to be tracking. Now, what are the things that we're looking at? What are the ideal percentages? Now, the percentage ranges also vary depending on what funnel you're doing. But a few things that I'll say. So lead, page view to lead conversion. I want it to be at least 30%. So of all the people who are seeing your landing page, at least 30% of them should opt in to that freebie. From there, from all the people who are becoming leads, so let's make it very obvious, leads to buyers, conversion rate, I want it to be Ideally, over 3%. Ideally, honestly, it should be even higher than that. It should be like 5% or more. But for the sake of this, I think it's fine. If it's 3, you can always work on increasing it. And it will also depend on, I mean, there's a lot of things that it depends on. If this is your existing audience, the percentage should be higher. If it's a cold audience, the percentage will be lower. Also, the percentage will depend on the price point of that offer. So if the higher it is, the lower the percentage, the lower the price point, the higher the percentage. Buyers of order bump, buyers of upsell, conversion rates of those. So buyers to order bump, conversion rate, ideally it would be 30%. So of all the buyers that you get, I would love 30% of them to add your order bump. Out of all the buyers you get, how many of them purchase your upsell? We want it to be above 8%, ideally 10%. And then free calls. This is where it's tricky because at this point, it just depends on a lot of things, but ideally you are converting, I want to say 10% of people into calls or more. These are the free calls. And your calls ideally are resulting in clients at above 20% rate. And again, this should be much higher for a lot of it. Just there's so many nuances to this, but this is what I would start at looking so that you know what to like how it's going in general. So what should you test first? I always recommend building out your funnel in the very beginning and making it very simple. I like calling it an MVP version of your funnel. You don't even need to have upsells as a part of it because like what's the point of having an upsell if you don't have initial buyers, right? So the first thing you need to track is like, are people actually buying your initial offer? But before we even look at that, we need to make sure that people are even opting in, right? So we look at the priority levels of instead of like making sure your sales calls are converting, which obviously is important too. If no one's booking those calls, then there's no point in working on improving those calls because maybe the call is great. You just don't have enough information to know if it's working great. So this is where we want to really focus on prioritizing what's going to get you the most data possible. So starting with the landing page. Actually, before the landing page, you want to make sure your offer is actually solid. When I say offer in this case, it's the freebie because people are not going to opt in on your landing page if they don't care about the thing that they're getting. So that's the number one first thing you need to test. Within the offer, the thing that will get them to know if they want to opt in, if they want the thing that you're selling, for free, is the headline. So what is the big chunk of text that we see on the very top of your landing page that has to speak to people's desires or wants and solving a problem that is actually relevant? That's the first thing that we actually test. Your page doesn't have to be beautiful. Your page can actually be very, very simple, but what you say is going to be the most important thing. Secondary is going to be what else is happening on the landing page, right? What else can we do to optimize conversions? Can we look at adding a little pop-up instead of having people enter their information right on the page? Can we add an image of the product? Or maybe we add a video. You can test a lot of these different things and notice how it affects the overall conversion. From there, your actual Tripwire offer. So what is the Tripwire offer is the most important thing. You can make your text pretty, you can have a nice image, but ultimately, if they don't care about getting that offer, then they're not going to buy. So you want to focus on how can I give them something or sell something that is actually desirable. From there, I look at what the offer actually is, I look at the price, and I look at the positioning. Those are the things that I test in that order. And then of course, we kind of keep going down the line. But these are the most important things to focus on because they're the start of everything. You can always add different things from the back end. You can add extra emails. You can have additional invitations to book a call with you. You can do a lot of other things in here, but that's essentially the beginning of everything as you're building out this type of funnel. Now, if you're looking into creating a funnel because you're starting a business, well, you're going to be pretty surprised to find out that it's actually a lot easier than you think. But if you're not sure why that actually is, click here to check out the next one where I talk about why online business is on easy mode right now and show you specific things that are enabling anyone to start an incredibly successful business online and make money. So if you're serious about the whole building your business and time and financial freedom thing, then I'll see you over there.